Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ba'd. So we are continuing the story of Prophet Ibrahim. So just to recap where we were, so we had covered that the story of Ibrahim has 198 verses in the Quran, and in the Bible it has several chapters from Genesis chapter 11 to chapter 35. Now, the background of Ibrahim is he was living in the area known as Iraq today. So that's kind of the area where he was. And he goes and he starts calling his people to not worship idols. Because Ibrahim was very intelligent, and Allah gave him this ability to go and tell people that idol worship is wrong. So he couldn't get through to them. So what does he do? He decides, he comes up with a plan, and he says, I'm going to go and break the idols when no one is looking, and I'm going to get people to start thinking for themselves. So he goes and he breaks the idols. The people think for a moment, and they say, it doesn't make sense. A big idol couldn't break it. So they think for a moment, but then they say, no. We're sticking to our idolatry. We love our idols. We're never going to give them up, no matter what. So that didn't work. And then they decided that they're going to burn him. And they threw Ibrahim into a fire, and it was a miracle that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected him and saved him, and he was fine. After that, he goes and he confronts this king, right? Or prior to that, he tells people not to worship the stars and the moon and the sun and all of that. And then he goes to the king, and this was King Nimrud in Babylon. And he goes and he argues with him, and he debates with him, and he convinces him that, you know what? This Allah is the one who causes, the sun to rise from where does the sun rise from? East or west? From the east, right? Sets in the west. He says, make it rise from the west. Make the opposite happen. He wasn't able to do it. So he disputed with the king, he debated the king, and he won that argument. Then he asks Allah, oh Allah, I want to see how you're able to bring the dead back to life. And he gets these birds and he trains them, and then he cuts them up and he calls them, and they all come back to life. And he realizes that this is a miracle from Allah. Finally, he called his father one last time. So this is my last time. I've been calling you for such a long time. I'm going to give you one last shot. Tries to call his father to stop worshiping idols. His father refuses him. His father threatens him. And Ibrahim makes a promise that he is going to pray for his father. And he tried to keep his promise, even though after his death, he's not supposed to be praying for him. So now this is where we left off. So Prophet Ibrahim is leaving. Everybody is upset at him. Everyone's mad at him because nobody wants to give up worshiping idols. Not his father, not his people, nobody. So he's saying, you know what? I need to go somewhere where I can call people to the worship of only one God. Call people to the worship of Allah. This is an important lesson. If you go to a place and you're trying to fix people, you're trying your best and you're calling them and you're calling them, there is a time where you're allowed to leave and say, you know what? I've done my absolute best, and these people simply will not change. So I still have some important message to teach people. I still have something, and people simply, in this region, people do not want to learn. There was a scholar by the name of Hassan al-Basri. He was a very famous scholar, well-known scholar. One day he approached a city, and he went into a city, and normally people would come and they would attend his classes and attend his lessons. And he went into one city, and one of the cities, nobody showed up. Nobody was interested. They were so busy, and they were in the marketplace, and they're buying and selling and distracted. And he decided, you know what? I'm leaving the city. I'm going to a different city. He said, no, we're so happy to have you here and everything. But nobody would show up to his classes. So they love him. They say, we're happy that we have a famous personality like Hassan al-Basri here, but they don't want to learn from him. So he goes, I'm leaving the city. They said, no, don't leave. We like you so much. He said, but you're not a people who want to benefit from my knowledge and from my classes. So he left the city and he went somewhere else where people are going to value him. So Ibrahim is doing the same thing. Ibrahim was looking at it. He's not interested in his self-interest. Hassan al-Basri was not interested in his personal self-interest. He feels that Allah has given him a message and he wants to convey this message. He has a responsibility. And if the message is not resonating with the group of people, he'll go to some other people and it might resonate with those people. The same thing that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did. When the message was not resonating with the people of Mecca, he said, it's time to move. Let me try with the people of Ta'if. The message did not resonate. He said, let me go and move to Medina and go somewhere else. He left the most important city, the most sacred city for Muslims on planet Earth. He left that city. Why? Because the message was not resonating. Prophet Ibrahim, he's doing exactly the same thing. But there's something important we need to look at. Not grabbing my tea, that's not what's important we need to look at. What we do need to look at, what is important to look at, is what a lot of people do is when they give up, people are calling their family, they're talking to their friends. Let's say they have a friend group and they decide, you know what, I want to become more Islamic. I want to become more dedicated to Islam and practicing Islam. And you've been around a group of people who you grew up with them and, you know, you spend a lot of time with them, but you're like, we need to change our ways. And you're calling them and you're talking to them and you're trying your best and the message is just not resonating. There's one of two reactions, right? One reaction is going to be that you say, I'm just sick and tired of these people. I'm mad at them. And you're like, I don't want to just be near them anymore. And you leave. You don't talk to those people. You don't see them anymore. But you don't go call anybody else either. You just kind of like, you're just upset. You're jaded. And you just don't want to have anything to do with them. This is not what Prophet Ibrahim is doing. Prophet Ibrahim is substituting one job for another job. Right? It's like someone who quits their job, right? Someone's, you know, stressed out. This work is too hard. This job is too tough. I'm quitting. So they quit. And then what do you do now? Just stay at home. You know, it's like I go around. I don't really do anything, right? There's a difference between quitting your job and doing nothing and quitting your job and going to another job because your services and what you can provide and the goodness that you can do is far greater, is more beneficial somewhere else. This is what Prophet Ibrahim is doing. Prophet Ibrahim is switching and saying, these people are not going to listen to my message. I want to go somewhere where people will actually listen to my message. So where is that place? So Allah guides him. Remember, he's a prophet already, okay? He's been thrown into a fire. Allah protected him. Allah guides him and sends him to a place where there's nobody there. This is strange, right? Normally you're supposed to go to another place where there's a lot of people and you're going to call them. But Allah goes and tells him, no. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to go to this special place called Mecca. And it's a valley. He says, I want you to go there and you're going to take your wife, you're going to take your young son, and you're going to go over there and you're going to do something there. So he goes, okay. He gets to Mecca. And what was in Mecca there at the time? Nothing. There's no people. There's pretty much no plants. There's no food. There's no palm trees. There's no dates. There's absolutely nothing there. So he gets there. And then when he gets there, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him that he's supposed to leave his wife, Hajj, and he's supposed to leave his son, Ismail, there. And he's supposed to go somewhere else. Where does he go? He goes towards the region of Palestine, what's called Jerusalem at the time. He goes there, and later on he has another son, Ishaq. We'll talk about that. But now the story continues without Prophet Ibrahim. Prophet Ibrahim leaves his son and his wife in Mecca, in an ancient valley, right? In a valley that's basically has nothing in there. And he leaves. Now just think about this for a moment. What a lot of people do is they try to read into every single story in the Quran some type of lesson that can directly be applied. But sometimes they read the wrong lesson in. Reading the wrong lesson into this story, there was a Muslim academic professor. I won't mention her name, but she made a statement and she said that Ibrahim was a deadbeat dad for leaving his wife and his son in the valley of Mecca. This is such a horrendous statement, and it's such a foolish statement that she would make something like this publicly, This is almost like uh, this is like a statement of disbelief in Islam, because when you insult the Prophet like this, one of the greatest prophets, in the religion of Islam, this is just like the height of of mistakes as well as foolishness. The problem, though, forget focusing on her. The problem is that she didn't understand the right lesson to be learned, right? The right lesson that she should have learned was that Prophet Ibrahim is a prophet. When Allah tells you to do something, you're supposed to do it exactly the way that Allah wants you to do it, without thinking, you know what? Why does Allah want me to? If you can figure out why, great. And if Allah doesn't tell you why, you still got to do it anyways. So Ibrahim is being told by Allah, this is what you're supposed to do. There's some greater good in it. Maybe Ibrahim knew, maybe he didn't know, but he's supposed to do exactly what Allah told him to do. So he leaves. So the lesson is not if there's some guy comes along and says, you know what? I'm going to copy Prophet Ibrahim. I'm taking my wife, I'm taking my son, and I'm going to Mecca for Umrah, and I'm going to leave them there. And I'm going back home. Right? That is not the lesson of Prophet Ibrahim. That is a complete misunderstanding of what the story is trying to tell you. The story is trying to say this was Ibrahim's context. Allah commanded him to do this. This is what he's supposed to do. Someone comes along and says, I'm going to do the same thing. That's not for them, right? So you have to understand the context of everything. So Ibrahim leaves. And when he leaves, now his wife, Hajar, and his son, Ismail, they have a little bit of food. Eventually their food is going to run out. So their food starts to run out. Their water starts to run out. And this child is hungry. The mother is hungry. They're going to need some civil. There's nobody around. So what starts happening is that Hajar, she's a believer, and she believes that her husband is a prophet as well. So she also knows that, hey, this is a command from Allah, but despite the fact that it's a command from Allah, naturally, when someone's hungry, someone's fearful, someone's going through something, you start thinking cause and effect. I need to do something. I need to find some help, whatever's going to happen. So she's in Mecca, and there's these two hills known as Safa and Marwa. And what she does is she climbs up one of the hills, and she's looking around, and what is she searching for? She's searching for any type of caravan that might be traveling through the middle of the desert, because a caravan is going to have people that have food and that have water with them. So she's looking for any help that she can possibly get. And does that mean that she didn't ask Allah for help? Of course she asked Allah for help. She's praying to Allah, but did Allah simply say that you pray to Allah and then you just wait? So now she's saying, okay, I'm praying to Allah, but now I got to do my part. What is her part? She runs up the hill of Safa and she looks around, doesn't see anyone. Now she goes back and she runs on the other side and she ascends the other hill on Marwa on the other side, and she's looking around and she's not finding anyone. So she goes back and forth between these two hills, keep on searching. Maybe I'll be able to find someone. Now what happens is that when she descends, right, when she goes up the hill, you have a very good view of what you can see over there. And you also have a very good view of what you can see behind you. So she can see her son. But there's a certain part when she was coming down and she was crossing between the two where she could not even see her son. So what she did was she sped through that part. So she sprinted, she ran through that part, right? So she's jogging probably, right? But that's the part where she really goes fast. So this is a specific place. And that place until today has been marked, and I'm gonna come back to that. But so this is what's going on. Now they're looking, they're searching, and then all of a sudden Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends a spring of water coming up from the earth, and this is known as the well of Zum-Zum. Okay, now Zum-Zum actually means like stop, it's enough. The water starts coming out, and the water's abundantly coming out. So this was a miraculous well, because you don't find a well spring up out of nowhere. How do you get a well normally? You have to dig, right? Was she digging? Well, she was ascending hills. So what happens is she's putting her effort in of what she knows and what she understands that she's supposed to be doing. But the reality is that Allah actually caused it to come from underneath rather than coming from the top. So now she's got a source of water. So you say, well, wait a minute. Two people in the middle of the desert, source of water is not going to save them. You can't just drink water every single day. So how did the well of Zum-Zum save their life somehow? Sometimes people ask this. I used to ask this question. I'm like, okay, you got the Zum-Zum well, that's great. You guys drink water like every single day for like a year, you're not going to survive. So what happens is you have to understand what's going on. Is that nomads, nomadic people, they're traveling from place to place, constantly moving around. They live in tents, and then they pack up their tent and they go somewhere else, and they pack up their tent and they go somewhere else. And how do they decide where to go? Based on sources of water. How do they determine where there's a source of water? Through the birds, right? Because the birds are also searching for water. So there's ways of tracking things, there's ways of figuring things out. So now all of a sudden they have a little bit of water, and within no time there's caravans crossing through in the middle, and they're all naturally going and searching for water. There's nomads going around and they're searching for water. So what happens is that the tribe of Jurhum, it's a well-known tribe in Arabia, they're traveling through, and all of a sudden they say, hey, there seems to be a source of water over there, but we've been through this route before. There's never been a well there. There's no source of water. This is strange. Something's not right. So they go to Mecca to go check out what's going on with this source of water. So they come in, and then there's some historical stories that they talk about. There was a negotiation between Hajar, and they started, saying, she said, like, the water belongs to me and all that stuff. These narrations are the historical narrations. They don't reach the level of authenticity of a hadith or something like that. Maybe they're true, maybe they're not true. It doesn't really matter. But what happens is basically the tribe says, hey, we're going to inhabit this area because there's a well with really good quality water, Zum-Zum water. Tastes good, seems to make us very healthy, and there's an abundance of it. This well seems like it's just going to keep going. And it keeps on going until today, right? So they go and they inhabit that area. Now, Ibrahim is not even there. He's gone. He put his trust in Allah because Allah told him to leave. So he goes somewhere else. Hajar is taken care of. Ismail, his son, is taken care of. So now there's this tribe of Jurhum that goes and settles. Now, obviously, these people were probably worshipping idols or something at the time, and Hajar is a believer. So she goes and she starts telling them, hey, you know what? Idol worship is wrong. My husband is Ibrahim, etc., etc. All of these, you can fill in all the gaps when it comes to the Quranic story. So the tribe of Jurhum settles. They live in Mecca. She's still there. Ismail is growing up in the city. Eventually, they learn the Arabic language. They're not Arabs. Remember that. They're not Arabs. So they learn the Arabic language, and they become what's called Musta'rab. Musta'rab means someone who becomes Arabized. Right? Like there's some people, sometimes people they go, sometimes converts, sometimes other people, they go to like Arabia, they go for like Mecca, or they go for Umrah or something like that, and they come back and they're wearing a thobe, they got a miswak in their mouth and everything, they got the perfume, and it's like, what happened to you? You were like somebody else, and like you came back Arabized, right? And they start speaking Arabic, and they're like, yani, we should get some tea, yani. It's like, what happened to you? It's like became complete Arab. This is what happened to. It's what happened to Ismail. This is what happened to Hajar. They learn the language. They grow up. Ismail eventually marries into the tribe of Jurhum. And now his descendants are going to be half Arab, half Arabized people. So he becomes Arab by language. And that's what happens, is that someone speaks the Arabic language properly and fluently, they're defined as being an Arab. Because if someone doesn't speak the Arabic language, you can have whatever blood you want in you, but you've lost the most important part of Arab culture. So now he goes and he marries one of the daughters of Jurhum and starts growing up. Ibrahim is probably visiting them back and forth. We don't have the details how many times he visited, but obviously he's going and visiting his family back and forth. So what he has is he has one family in Mecca and he has another family in what's called the Levant, or the greater Syria, or the area of Palestine. He's got another son there, Ishaq. He's going back and forth between these two places. And he keeps on going and visiting them. Now, during one of his visits, Ibrahim goes to visit his son. He's been growing up. He's married, or maybe prior to marriage. Prior to marriage. He goes and visits him. And now Allah tells him that I want you to sacrifice this son. Now, how did this happen? It happened because Ibrahim has a dream. And in his dream, or he has a vision. So dream is one thing, a vision is something else. He has a vision or a dream where Allah is basically giving him a signal that he's supposed to sacrifice his son, Ismail. At the time, this is his only son. He only has one son. This is prior to Ishaq being born. So he has one son at the time. And Allah is basically testing him to see, is he still going to listen? So first of all, he had to sacrifice his wife, and he had to sacrifice his son and leave them and be away from them for a period of time. That was a difficult test in and of itself. Now, his second test is going to be, is he willing to give up his son for Allah? So what does he do? What he does is, his dreams of a prophet are true because they're revelation. So he goes to his son, Ismail, and he asks him, he says, my son, I have seen in the vision from Allah that I am supposed to sacrifice you. فَانْظُرْ مَاذَا تَرَى. What do you think? What's your opinion? Now, this is important for two reasons. Reason number one, in the Bible, the story has been changed. In the Bible, Ibrahim is like, oh no, I have to sacrifice my son. So he goes and he tricks his son and he says, hey, we're going for a little trip. He says, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to go do something, just you'll see what happens, basically. And he tricks him and he deceives him without telling him what's going to happen. What happens in the Quran? Completely different. He consults with his son and says, I want your opinion of what you think I should do in this situation. This is what Allah is commanding me to do. And what does Ismail respond with? He says, you will find me, insha'Allah, min as-sabirin. You will find me, God willing, among the patient people. Meaning, do what you need to do. Right? Do what you need to do, and hopefully I'm going to be perfectly fine with it because I know this is what Allah wants. So, the word insha'Allah, when Ismail says this, is very significant because insha'Allah has two connotations. One of them is, if God wills, meaning if Allah forces it to happen, right? The second meaning is, I am going to try my absolute best to be patient, but I don't know what's going to happen to me. I don't know if I'm going to make it through this. I don't know if I'm going to have a change of heart. So God willing, if somehow something comes in my way and I can't do anything about it, then I hope that Allah keeps me steadfast and firm in the right way, but I'm going to put my full effort into it. That's the second meaning. That's the true meaning of inshallah. So Ismail is ready and he says, I am willing to go ahead and do this. Now just think about who would be willing to do something like this. Think about the type of relationship that Ibrahim and his son must have had, and the type of faith, the type of belief that Ismail has in his father being a prophet, growing up like this. This is something very serious. And he grew up away from his father. His father was not even there. So how does something like that happen? Right? So some people take this as a lesson. They say, you know what? They say because there must be some special secret recipe that Prophet Ibrahim had in raising children. He had like some kind of way of like teaching them and raising them and telling them whatever it is. So all the prophets must have some special way to like get their children to like love them and listen to them and obey them and be good to them and care for them and all of that stuff. But is that a correct analysis? No, it's not. The reason why is because if Prophet Ibrahim was given this, then all the other prophets would be given the same thing. And if you look at the other prophets, if you look at Prophet Nuh, Prophet Noah, son did not believe in him. If you look at Prophet Yaqub, later on, comes down the line, he's got 12 kids. He has 12 sons. And 10 of them tried to kill one of them. I mean, that's a very bad ratio, right? If you think about it, that's problematic. Does it mean that he didn't do what he was supposed to be doing? No. Why am I mentioning this? I'm mentioning this because I've heard lectures and I've seen people talk about, you know what? There's something that Prophet Ibrahim must have done for sure that resulted in this level of certainty or yaqeen that Prophet Ismail had. If that was the case, then how did the other prophets miss it? Right? So that's why I'm bringing it back to the lesson before about when Ibrahim left his wife, he left his child, the wrong lesson that was taken by that academic lady who, may Allah guide her, that is the wrong lesson to be taken. So the incorrect lesson, the wrong lesson to be taken is that somehow this was just a result of what Prophet Ibrahim was doing. It's not ever independent. He's doing the right thing. All prophets are guided by Allah. They're going to be doing the right thing. But the difference is they had tawfiq from Allah. Tawfiq from Allah means that Allah is giving you a level of success. You put your effort in, and then Allah causes your effort to yield fruit. This is the reality of everything, right? When you're going to go and you plant a tree in your backyard. You're like, I want an apple tree. What do? You dig, you put the seeds in there, you put the water, you check every single day you're planting. What if the soil ends up being bad, just doesn't function properly, or like some little bug comes and like messes up your entire tree? Nothing you can do about it. Your job is to do the stuff that you're supposed to do, and the success will come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah gave success in his son following him to Prophet Ibrahim. He did not give that same level of success to Prophet Nuh. He did not give that same level of success to Prophet Yaqub. So there's a difference between all of these things. Allah chooses things that sometimes we don't understand. Does that mean because we look at these results and we reverse engineer it, we backtrack and we say, you know what, that has to be only a result of what you put in, and someone else, things went wrong because they didn't put in that effort. They didn't put in that time. They didn't have the right techniques. They didn't do this. They didn't do that. This is not the way we're supposed to understand things. So it's very important to understand this lesson whenever we're looking at any story in the Quran, any general principle in Islam. So Ismail says, I am ready because I believe in Allah. I'm ready to give up my life for Allah. What does Ibrahim say? I am ready to give up the one thing in my life that I love the most. This is the thing that he loves the absolute most. And Allah is testing him. Do you love Allah more or do you love this more? What is the lesson we're supposed to get? Because if anyone comes along today and says, you know what? I also had a dream and I'm supposed to sacrifice one of my family members. You call the police immediately. Immediately. Because they're not prophets. They're not Prophet Ibrahim. All right? You call 911, you get them arrested. Right? This is the wrong thing to do. The lesson for us here is look at what Allah asked his prophets to sacrifice. Prophet Ibrahim has to sacrifice the thing that he loves most in this world. Prophet Ismail is asked to sacrifice himself, give up his entire life. What does Allah ask us to sacrifice? A little bit of sleep in the morning. You're supposed to wake up for Fajr. And many people, they're like, man, Fajr is so difficult, it's so early in the morning. This blanket feels like it's 100 pounds. It's not coming off my body. I don't want to get up. It's like I can't move it, right? You don't want to give up your sleep. You don't want to give up, you go to a place and there's like pizza party. They're like, I love pizza parties. And then they order all pepperoni pizza. You're so upset. You say, oh no, I feel tempted to eat the pepperoni pizza, but it's pork. Not allowed to eat it. So what do? right? You have to sacrifice. You have to be willing to give that up. You want to make some money, you say, oh, you know what? Day trading cryptocurrency seems so tempting right now. There's these altcoins that are coming out. Elon Musk is investing in Dogecoin and other people are doing this. I could become a millionaire overnight. But day trading stocks, day trading cryptocurrency is considered to be massive speculation. And a transaction like that, I'm not saying the cryptocurrency is completely not allowed, but speculating on something like that is a type of gambling. So like, I want to make quick money. I want to become rich. But Islam doesn't allow that. You can't gamble like that. So you have to give that up. So look at what we're asked to give up and look at what the prophets are being asked to give up. That's the lesson. The lesson, if Allah wanted us to, He could have put us through tests like this. And it's a blessing that He doesn't. Our test is not giving up our children. Our test is like, you know what? My child was really tired and he started crying. And you say, you know what? It's so difficult. I'm already dealing with so many other things and he's crying and it's so frustrating to me. I can't stand this. Why is Allah putting, a lot of parents say, why is Allah putting me through this test? It's a crying child. You don't have to sacrifice your child, right? You don't have to give up your entire life. The tests that we go through, extremely difficult, extremely easy compared to the difficult tests that the other prophets had to go through. So that's the lesson for us. So Ibrahim says, I'm going to do it. Ismail says, I'm ready to do it. He goes, takes a knife, and they go to the region of Mina. In Mina, this is all where Hajj takes place, or the Hajj rituals where it take place. He goes to Mina. Allah is testing him. Does he love Allah more, or does he love his son more? What is he going to do? He goes, puts his son down on the ground, takes out the knife, says Bismillah, and he's about to do it, and Allah stops him. And he said, that's it. Just seeing if you were going to do it. Now, he didn't know Allah was going to stop him. He had no idea what to do because Allah does not need anyone's life to be sacrificed. So he says, stop. Ismail does not need to die. He doesn't. This was just to see if you're going to do it. So he says, but since you saw in the vision you have to sacrifice something, something still should be sacrificed. Go ahead and sacrifice an animal. Eat it. Feed it to the poor. Everything is going to be fine. Ibrahim sacrifices a sheep instead, and Allah loves him. Allah makes him an example, and Allah considers him to be Khalilullah. He gets the title now. He's the friend, the beloved friend of Allah, because he's always putting Allah in front of everything. Number one. And number two, Ibrahim is someone who's constantly traveling around by himself. Where are his friends? Doesn't have friends. He's by himself. So he also needs a friend. So one, Allah loves him and he loves Allah. And number two, you need someone, you need like someone to, feel like you have someone there. You have a companion or something. Another test of Ibrahim was he didn't have a constant companion. He's always moving around, traveling to different places. So Allah said, I'm going to be your companion. So he gives him this title. And this is the special title that Prophet Ibrahim gets. Now, this story becomes a reenactment for us in Hajj and every single year when it comes to Eid. So in Islam, we have two Eids, which is really cool because, many people, they're like, oh, well, a lot of Christians and stuff, they say, we have Christmas. So yeah, but we actually have two Eids where we get, gifts, supposed to get like nice gifts and all of those things. And one of the Eids is connected to Prophet Ibrahim, directly connected to Prophet Ibrahim. So what happens? Everyone is supposed to, if they can afford it, sacrifice an animal and reenact or relive the situation that Prophet Ibrahim was going through to remind us about the spirit of sacrifice. If you go for Hajj, which is in Mecca, what do you reenact? You reenact the journey of Hajar when she was going between Safa and Marwa back and forth, searching for water, searching for food, looking for somebody to give her something, right? Or so that she could survive. So all of these things come back into the ritual of Hajj. But where does the ritual of Hajj originate? It originates after this. So after this happens, Ibrahim leaves. He comes back a few years later. And now Ismail is grown up even more. This test is already over. The sacrifice is already over. And now when he comes back, Allah reveals to him, he says, you're supposed to build a masjid. You're supposed to build a mosque here. Now, if you looked at the world at that time, there were idols, there were temples with people worshiping different idols, worshiping the stars, so many different temples dedicated to all these other things, but there wasn't one unified place for anyone who wants to worship Allah that they can go there and they can worship. They can pray over there specifically. So Allah told them, I want you to make a masjid, but this is not going to be just a normal masjid. This is going to be the blueprint. It is the master masjid. It is the core masjid for anyone who's going to worship only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what happens? They start to build the Kaaba. So the Kaaba is built by Prophet Ibrahim and by his son Ismail, and they started working together. Now, what is the Kaaba going to be built of? Now, normally you could build things of so many different, materials. In America, for example, in California, for example, the houses are made of wood. They're made of wood because it's cheaper. They're made of wood because we have trees around. How many trees do you have in Mecca? What's that? And yeah, exactly. Yeah, termite problems. But what does Mecca have? Mecca doesn't even have many trees. I mean, it's got a well now, but it doesn't have much. So the natural thing is going to be stone. So now they have to go, and they're going around Mecca. There's rocks, there's mountain regions and hills and stuff like that. And they start going and gathering stones, and they begin slowly to build the Kaaba. This is all mentioned. This is all from the Quran. They start to build the Kaaba, and this is going to be a building which only Allah is going to be worshipped. Nobody else is supposed to be there. So while they're building it, Allah tells us in the Quran that they started praying. And they started making dua, which is very important. Because whenever you do something, you're supposed to ask Allah to make sure it has some benefit. Right? They could have been like, we're going to build this Kaaba, and people are going to come because we did such a good job. You never assume that no matter how good your effort is, it's automatically going to yield fruit. So what do? They start praying. They make a dua. They say, Rabbana, taqabbal minna. Oh Allah, accept this effort from us. The first and most important thing, whatever you're doing, you have to realize that your effort is the most important thing. Because maybe you make a mistake. Maybe there's an earthquake, the building breaks apart. You're like, complete waste. No, it's not a complete waste. If you're putting your effort in, Allah rewards you for your effort. That's the way it works, right? How many teachers do that? Right? How many teachers in school put in a lot of effort into your exam and you study so hard, but then you get the answers wrong? Will your teacher be like, you know what? We're giving you an A because I know you put a lot of effort into it. Very rarely is that ever going to happen. That's not happening. Right? They have a very clear score. We want outcome. We have to grade you based on the outcome. How does Allah grade you? He grades you based upon your sincerity and the effort that you put in. Right? That's beautiful. So they're asking Allah, oh Allah, accept this from us. Let our effort have some benefit. At least reward us for the effort. Number one. Number two, they said, oh Allah, forgive us for our mistakes, because whatever you do, it's not going to be perfect, right? And number three, they're asking Allah to become fully, submissive to them, to be servants of Allah. So they go and they make all of this dua while they're building. And Prophet Ibrahim is making dua. He's asking Allah, Allah, make this building to be of benefit to people. Because the purpose of this building is supposed to be a place where people are going to worship Allah. So you could build a building, you could build a masjid, you could build a giant place and say, you know what, people should come here because it looks so nice and it looks so beautiful. Maybe nobody's going to come. So the point is, a believer, a Muslim should always think, number one, I'm going to put my effort in. Number two, it would be really nice if my effort actually helps people and actually achieves its objective, and you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you that and allow you to have that. So what happens is that he builds this building. There's very few people even around, and Ibrahim is calling people and saying, everyone who wants to worship only Allah, come to this building. Come over here, and this is the way we're going to worship. We're going to pray, and we're going to make tawaf where we go around the Kaaba. Now, if you make tawaf, if you think about this, both of these forms of prayer are universal. This is how people have prayed throughout history, whether they're praying to an idol or they're praying to Allah. When you bow down in front of someone, you can bow down in front of an idol, showing extreme reverence to it. You could bow down in front of your ancestors or your teachers or something, showing extreme reverence at the point of worship, or bowing down to a king or something like that. Or you can bow down because what are you doing when you bow or when you prostrate? You're lowering yourself to show that that person is great. So one way to worship Allah is to bow down and perform that prayer. The second way to worship is to take an object or to take something and make it the center point of your focus. This is what people have always done. So idol worshippers, what do? They have a statue sitting somewhere and they start walking around it. And the reason why they're walking around it, they're making a circle around it, because now when you make a circle by walking, it shows that that thing is in the center, signifying that this thing is the center of my life. So this is what people, when they're worshiping other things, they do the exact same thing, because somewhere in the back of their mind, people made this connection naturally, whether they understand it or they don't. It's something built into the nature of people. The bowing and the prostrating, sometimes you can't understand it. When you hear it explained, you're like, that's why I never thought about it. But there's something intrinsically there. That's why it's universally done. So the Kaaba now becomes this object where when you walk around it, you're making it the center point, saying that whatever this object represents is the center point of my life. What does the Kaaba represent? It represents the worship of only Allah. Nobody besides one and only true God. Now, usually we have people come into the masjid and they ask us questions. Usually when we have tours and stuff, people come, non-Muslims come, and they come to learn about Islam. And I always kind of trick them. It's like, I say, you know what? See this Kaaba? You see this picture with 1 million people around the Kaaba, they're all praying? Guess what's inside the Kaaba that makes it so special? So I get all sorts of funny guesses. So some people say, the Prophet Muhammad is buried inside the Kaaba, and that's why you guys are praying towards the building. I said, good guess, but no. I said, the original copy of the Quran is inside the Kaaba, and that's what makes it so special. I said, no, try again. He says, they're thinking, And I said, you know what it is? What is it? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Why? Because if there was something inside the Kaaba, then people would start thinking, hey, maybe we're praying to that thing. Let's say, we could have put the original copy of the Quran inside the Kaaba, but then what's going to happen? People are, we're praying to the Quran. You don't want to be praying to the Quran. If the Prophet could have been buried inside the Kaaba. If he was, what's going to happen? People are going to say, you're praying to the Prophet. You don't want that. So Allah made it very specific that if you go to any other temple or idol worshiping place, the idols are in there and you're bowing down, you're prostrating because you're doing it to the statues and the thing. What is the Kaaba? It's just an empty building. It's supposed to pretty much have nothing inside of it. And some people just put there's some pillars and there's some marble and they put a little, lights and stuff like that inside. No one really goes inside anyways today. So what's special about the Kaaba? It's empty. It's empty, and it's a symbol that signifies that anyone who faces in this direction, they're all doing it for the same reason. Every single Muslim around the world is facing in this because they're signifying that we all worship only one God. We are different from all the other people who are praying to different things and believing in all sorts of other stuff. We're the only ones who are doing this. Anyone who wants to pray to one God, join us in this giant circle. Because if you think about it, right? Muslims, you have the Kaaba here. Muslims make a circle around the Kaaba. All of them are praying towards the Kaaba. If you start zooming the camera out further and further away, wherever you are, you're going to be praying in the direction of Mecca. Even today, when we're praying, what's the direction of Mecca from here in California? Which direction is it? East? Southeast? Northeast. I know if you look at a flat map, it looks like it's southeast. But remember, the world is not flat. FYI. Right? The earth is not flat. So it's round. The shortest distance between California and between Mecca is which way? Technically, you can go anyway. You can fly like this. You can fly like this. You can fly like this. You can do backwards, and you'll still get to Mecca, right? Doesn't matter which direction. If you're in the Qibla direction, if you do the exact opposite, you'll still get to Mecca, right? But what's the shortest distance? The shortest distance is north-northeast. It's the quickest way to get there. Shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. If you go in a straight line, you're going to reach there through north-northeast. So that's the direction. And if you think every single person on earth, whichever city they're in, whether it's London or Tokyo or, Cairo, every single person who's facing Mecca, they're forming a giant circle of Muslims around the entire earth. All like the circles around the Kaaba, those circles get bigger and bigger and bigger, and every single Muslim is part of that circle. That's amazing unity if you think about that, right? When I first heard that, I was like, that's so cool. That's really cool. And not only that, there's another thing I heard. I read an article about the adhan. If you think about it, time zones differ, right? The adhan is being called constantly throughout the entire day in some time zone. So when the adhan is being called in Egypt, right? When you look at the difference in time zone, after it's called, you have another time zone to the right of it. Adhan is being called at the same time. Another time zone that's going on, adhan is being called. So basically, the adhan is being called constantly throughout the entire world, nonstop. And the people who are praying are forming these giant circle around the entire Kaaba throughout the entire earth, nonstop. This is amazing. If you look at the unity of Islam, you look at what Islam has actually done, and all of this started with a small little building built by Prophet Ibrahim and Prophet Ismail when they have almost no followers. And now there's millions of people going there. And now the Hajj is the largest annual gathering in like the entire world. Right? It's amazing. Now, do you think that Ibrahim would have imagined that this is what's going to happen? He could never imagine. Do you think that Hajar, when she was running back and forth between Safa and Marwa looking for water, she's so worried, so concerned, do you think that if she knew that millions of people are going to be imitating her going back and forth, right? She'd probably be like walking forward and be like, yeah, this is so cool, man. It's going to be millions of people going to be copying what I'm doing, right? At the time, she didn't know. At the time, Prophet Ibrahim didn't know. And there's an important lesson in that. The lesson is that sometimes you may be doing some effort. You may be doing some project. You may be doing something for Allah. And it looks like there's no results. And you don't realize that maybe the results are going to come in a year. Maybe the results are going to come in 50 years. Maybe the results are going to come in 1,000 years. You don't know which thing Allah is going to put so much blessing in because you can't judge at that moment. That's exactly an important lesson that we learn. We're supposed to do what we need to do. We're supposed to do our part. We leave the results up to Allah, and we never know what can possibly happen. So afterwards, this is most of the story of Ibrahim that's mentioned in the Quran. Afterwards, some people later on came to visit Prophet Ibrahim. He couldn't recognize exactly who they were. No one else recognized who they were, so they looked like strangers. No one knew who they were. So they came and they greeted him with salam. They greeted him with peace. So he says, yes, peace to you too. Right? This was a general greeting, not sure who these people are exactly. Ibrahim is such a generous person. He goes and he says, let me get you some food because you guys are foreigners. Hospitality. He goes and he sacrifices a calf. He roasts it. He cooks it, makes it all nice and everything. And he comes and he serves his guests. So now this idea, this aspect of generosity, something built into Prophet Ibrahim. Very important. And something that we should never forget. So he goes and he brings them the food. Now, normally when someone is out of town, they're traveling, you make some really nice food for them. They're hungry, they're tired. They're supposed to be eating this food. These people, they don't eat anything. Their hands are not moving. Ibrahim's like, let me get started. You guys start. Let's all eat. They're not touching it. So now he gets very concerned. And he gets very worried and say, what's going on? What kind of people? They seem like nice people, but they're not even eating my food. What am I supposed to do? So he started getting scared. And he said, I think these people might be they're gonna, rob me. They're gonna try and kill me or something like that. So he gets scared. They tell them, don't be afraid. We are messengers that have been sent by Allah to the people of Lut, who's from the family of Ibrahim. One of the family members who believed in him, he went to a different town. We're going to cover his story next, inshallah. Went to a different town to go and call people to Allah. So Ibrahim is not only calling by himself, he has family members who are going elsewhere, students technically going elsewhere, and they're going and they're calling other people to Allah. So he says, we are sent to the people of Lut, all right, which is Sodom. We'll talk about that. But these people were angels, and they came in human form, and they're informing Ibrahim, we're just kind of passing through, and we just decided to stop by you. He said, well, why would the angels stop by Ibrahim? He said, we have a message for you as well. Our message is that you're going to have another son, and your son is going to be named Ishaq, and he's going to be a very knowledgeable boy, and afterwards he's going to have another son named Yaqub. So you're going to have a grandson as well. And both of these sons are going to be prophets. So now he already has one son, Ismail. He's going to be a prophet of Allah. He's going to have another son from a different wife, Ishaq. And Ishaq is going to give birth to Yaqub. So his wife, Sarah, she's saying, this is strange. She starts like getting shocked, saying, I'm an old woman. How could I possibly give birth to a child now? My husband is old. Forget him. Even if it's a miracle by Allah, I'm so old. How am I supposed to deliver a child? Certain age, when you get past childbearing and you get past even the physical ability to really, it's hard to imagine delivering a child. So the angels responded and they said, are you surprised? The command of Allah. Allah can do anything. This is going to be a mercy from Allah. And Ishaq was born. And Ishaq is Isaac, and he was another prophet who did some other stuff, which we won't get into because it's not mentioned in detail in the Quran. Now, why is it significant? It's very significant because the Christians and the Jews believe that the one who was supposed to be sacrificed was Ishaq and not Ismail. The reason why this is significant is because if you look at the story in the Quran, as well as in the Bible, the indications are very clear. The indication in the Quran is, if that Ishaq was being given the good news that he's going to have Yaqub, if he was the one who was supposed to be sacrificed, is cheating. You already know that it's a test. How could he possibly have another son if he's going to die? It's not possible. Right? So the Quran is very clear. You have Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah, you have Shaykh Ibn Kathir, Imam Ibn Kathir, and many other scholars explain that this verse in particular makes it very clear that Ismail was the one to be sacrificed, even though he's not mentioned by name. The indications are clear-cut. If you look at the Bible, the indications are also very clear. It says to Ibrahim, you're supposed to sacrifice your son, your only son. Now, only son at the time means that there's only one son. Is that the elder son or the younger son? It's the elder son, because there can't be a younger son. It has to be the elder son. And who is the elder son? Ismail or Ishaq? Even according to the Bible, it's Ishmael. So it's very clear. The signs are very clear. And it's interesting because we were having dinner yesterday. Was today Friday? Yesterday, yeah, we were having dinner yesterday, and one of the brothers was there. Alhamdulillah, one of our link outside brothers. He was incarcerated, been released from prison and everything, and he's former Jehovah's Witness. And somebody asked a question about, how do you explain Islam to Jehovah's Witness when they're already they don't believe that Jesus is God, and they're very close to Islam in the sense that they don't accept, other gods and stuff like that. So he was explaining, he says, I was Jehovah's Witness, and one of the things that really convinced me about the religion of Islam and why my own religion was problematic and they couldn't give me the answers is because when I looked at the covenant that God is supposed to have with Isaac and God is supposed to have with Ishmael, and I looked at the Bible and I asked questions about how can it be that he's supposed to sacrifice his only son and his only son is Ismail, and then all of a sudden later on it inserts a comment and said it was Isaac actually. How do we reconcile that? And then he went and he asked a bunch of other questions and he said this is one of the things that actually opened my eyes and led me towards Islam. Very significant point. And alhamdulillah, he's been a practicing Muslim for a very long time and had a nice meal. Interestingly enough, it was the same type of meal that Prophet Ibrahim was serving his guests, with only one difference. Those guests didn't eat, but we ate. It's the only difference between the two. We really ate, alhamdulillah. So inshallah, this is the story of Prophet Ibrahim in the Quran. There's a few more aspects that are mentioned, hadith. I'm not going to get into them. We're going to focus primarily just from the Quran. This is the story of Prophet Ibrahim. Are there any questions? Yes. So why is it important and why is it crucial about which son was it that was supposed to be sacrificed? From the Islamic perspective, is not very significant at all. From a Christian and Jewish perspective, it's extremely significant because they purposely wanted to cut Ismail out of this important lineage because Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is from the lineage of Ishmael. And they, the Jews, the children of Israel, as well as the Christians, because technically Prophet Isa was from the lineage of Bani Israel, they want to say, no, all the prophets and special people can only be from this lineage. So they want to cut out any possibility that there could be anyone who's special outside of the children of Israel, which is contradicted by their own book, because Deuteronomy chapter 18 says very clear, whereas the prophecy of Prophet Musa, it says that I will raise unto them a prophet like unto their brethren, like unto their brothers, meaning from the other line, not from the line of Prophet Musa, which is going to Ishaq, from the line or the lineage of his brother on the other side, which is Ismail. And that prophecy has been unfulfilled. So it's a very important prophecy. So from the perspective of like dawah and calling people to Islam and making them understand some of the modifications that have come into the Bible and the Old Testament and the Torah and all of that people have today, it's very significant. Otherwise, it really wouldn't matter. For the Muslim who just looks at it and says, what difference does it make? It doesn't make any difference which son it was. It's a test from Allah. They're both children. They're both prophets. But from the perspective of historically how people have made this alteration and tried to build up this narrative that they're the chosen people and that their covenant is only with them and the covenant is going to be cut off with someone else, very significant difference. Okay. Other questions? Yes.
Does the Christian scripture have the story of like angels who came disguised and the prophet Ibrahim heard about having son, grandson?
Yeah, so the question is whether the Christian scriptures have the story about the angels coming and announcing the birth of Isaac. I don't remember, to be honest with you. I'd have to look it up. Yeah, I'm not sure. Other questions? The other question? Yes. 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 Yeah. So the question is, what is my advice to children, to parents on how to raise good, righteous children, hoping that we can become like Ibrahim was, good example of children. So you get asked this a lot because it's a challenge. People are going through a lot. So I would say to focus on a few things. Number one, and the most important thing, is that as Sharalanti says, you have to be it. Okay? Be it means you have to be a role model for Islam in your own life. People always, I get asked this question all the time, say, what can we do and what class can we put him in and this and that? And if you ask them, are you a role model of Islam at home? And the answer is no, you can put him in the best VIP honors Islamic program, and it's not going to help that much because they're getting the opposite message at home. So that's the number one, right? It's not the only thing, but it's the number one thing. Number two is to really put them in a good group of friends. Having solid Muslim friends with a strong iman, strong faith, strong Islamic identity is extremely crucial. And how do you determine like who friends are going to be? The reality is everyone is influenced by everything around them. We're influenced by everything, right? We're influenced by the songs we listen to. We're influenced by the movies that we watch. We're influenced by the games that we play. We're influenced by the books that we read. Whichever things have an anti-Islamic element, you want to minimize them as much as possible. Whichever things have a pro-Islamic element to them, that teach good manners, that are in line with Islam, good behavior, help you appreciate the blessings of Islam or something like that, those should be increased. Okay, so that's number two, right? So number two is friends. Number three is the diet, right? The diet of your children. I'm not talking about food. The diet, the electronic diet and the intellectual diet of your children has to be really good. So you have to, when you have a good diet, you have to do two things, right? You have to feed a food diet. You eat the right foods and you avoid the bad foods. Exactly the same thing. The diet of the type of songs you're listening to. Are they nasheed songs? Or are they like Lady Gaga, some weird, stuff? It's going to affect you, right? The type of books that you read. Are you reading Stories of the Prophets book? Or are you reading Harry Potter books? It's going to affect you. People think, oh, I'm so happy my children are at least reading Harry Potter. Is so interesting. Okay, fine. It's interesting. But do they know anything? I mean, they know Voldemort and they know all these weird, all the little creatures and wizards and, spells and everything. They know all of that stuff. You say, do you know who Prophet Lut is? Do you know the names of the two kids of Prophet Ibrahim? Nope. Can you name 10 companions? Can you name 5 companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him? Nope. But I know who Kobe Bryant is. I know who LeBron James is, and I know who this person is, and I know. The thing is, this is the problem. So we're not instilling those things in there, right? So I would say these are the top 3 things. The top 3 things, and then of course, good Islamic education and all these other things is important. I know it's not easy. People always say, but it's harder than you're saying it is. Of course it is. Everything's harder than the way that you say it. Doesn't mean that you don't have to do it though. You still got to do it. Right? So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq and give us the success to be able to do that and show us the fruits and not test us with our children. Ameen. All right, we'll conclude it at that, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Nastaghfiruka Allah wa natubu ilayk. Please help pick up the chairs. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Oh, one announcement real quick. Sister Hira has an announcement. Go ahead.
You want me to make you for the class? Assalamu alaikum, everyone. First of all, did everybody get to enjoy the chai tonight? All right, alhamdulillah. I just wanted to thank our community member, Sister Asma Rashid, and her husband for volunteering and bringing the chai for all of us. So may Allah bless her, and thank you so much for doing that, inshallah. All right, I just wanted to make a quick announcement about the session. I'm sorry. Can we just please pause the chairs for just a moment, brothers? Just for 2 minutes, inshallah. I just have to make a quick announcement. Jazakumullah khair. Okay, so just what Shaykh Mustafa the session that he gave tonight, there's a class that he also offers through CIU. It's called Quran 1, Prophets in the Quran, and it's part of the California Islamic University. We are presently doing classes in person and also online. So this specific class actually goes through all the prophets mentioned in the Quran, specifically highlighting the lessons that we can learn from their lives and apply it to our own, and also comparative analysis between the verses of the Quran and also looking at the Bible and how what are the similarities and the differences. So for us to be able to have a dialogue with non-Muslims living in the West, this is a very important and crucial thing. So inshallah, if you guys are interested, please feel free to come up here, and you can scan your smartphones, just the camera, and you can actually go directly to the site to register. The class is on demand, which means we give you the whole course and you go through it on your own pace. You can take it for audit purposes, which is just going through and learning, or you can get credit for the class by taking assignments and an exam, and inshallah, you can actually do that as well. So it's very beneficial. We have a lot of programs. We have actually a degree program and diploma. If you want to talk about it further or get more information, you can go to our website, www.calislamic.com. The best way to reach us is through email, inshallah, which is all listed on the website. And if there are any further questions, I'm more than happy to answer them for you. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.